roll over to some wide receivers. And yeah, I mean, we have the two guys at the top that this is sort of like the David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell decision last week to me. Between Antonio and Julio, what are you able to differentiate between these two, or are you gonna like sort of split here?
I think I'm leaning slightly more towards Julio, to be honest. I know Antonio is home, and Ben usually plays really a lot better at home, but that Packers secondary is just so bad, man. Like they're so awful. And Julio's coming off of just an average game against the Chicago Bears. I really think he's in for a bounce back. I mean, super high over-under, too, of almost 54 right now. And after only seeing 5 targets in the first week, it's like, okay, let's get Julio back into things. Let's really get him going in a game where they're going to have to keep up with scoring with the Packers. So I think I'm going to have a slightly more exposure to Julio than I am Antonio. But, I mean, geez, you can't argue with what he did week 1.
Yeah, I mean, for Antonio to put that point total up without scoring just shows you how useful he is, in fantasy in general. So I'm with you. I think they both see a bump in production when they're at home. I looked it up before for the article. It looks like Antonio's about 5 points better at home in the last 3 years, and Julio is like 2 or 3 points better at home. So they definitely will benefit from that. I'll probably go with Julio too, just at the Dome. I think that game, even though the point total is 53.5, I think that game could still go over. So I'm fully on board with that. And then as we keep going, we got the Brandon Cooks revenge game. So
that's right.
That's all we need. What are we thinking about that narrative street this week?
Oh man, I mean, it just seems like such a great situation for him to just have a monster game. Like, it's 5 or 6 catches, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns is such in the realm of possibility against that New Orleans defense. Obviously, moving up, he's 8,200, so you are getting some savings versus Julio and Antonio. I just don't know roster construction-wise if it's going to be really easy to get 2 out of those 3 in a lineup.
Right.
So maybe in GPPs where you're really finding some value plays somewhere, you can get Cooks and Julio or Antonio into a lineup. But I think for cash games, I would rather have Julio.
Yeah, for sure. And this is, I mean, people, I have a feeling that people may overreact to the week that happened last week with defenses. You can get away with, we'll talk about it at the end, but you can definitely get away with a couple of these cheaper defenses this week and just hope for the best, because so many of these guys are in such good spots that you really do want to have some exposure to these, insane over-under games. Like 53.5 doesn't happen every week. And then you got 55 for the New Orleans game. So it's definitely something to think about, just sort of punting tight end, and just paying up everywhere else if you're not going to go with like Gronk or somebody. Then out of these this next range, any strong takes? Maybe these next, like all the way down to 6,000. So from like Cooper to Pryor.
Yeah, there's a couple favorites. I mean, Jordy, just with his touchdown upside alone, I think is worth it for 7,900. Really big fan of his. I'm not huge into Mike Evans. I think just his target volume can't be as high as it was last year. I don't think it's possible. Even though he's playing the Bears, who have a penchant actually for shutting down number 1 receivers.
Yep.
Shockingly enough. So I'm fading Evans in cash, especially. I may have a small exposure to him in GPPs. Michael Thomas, I'm not sure how good he is yet. Like, I want to have definitely a piece of that game and a piece of that action in that 55 over-under game, but I don't think it's going to be Michael Thomas, especially with how good those outside corners are for New England, or how good we thought they were for New England.
Right.
Crabtree's intriguing for me at 71. He's kind of a middle point between the really high Julio's and Antonio's. So I think he could see some play. And then just lower than that, super in on Fitz. Like if Fitz doesn't see 15 targets this week, I don't know what's going to happen. Because I mean, like we said before, John Brown is banged up. He didn't practice today. He's got a thigh issue. David Johnson, who was second on the team in targets last year, is done. Like Larry Fitzgerald, from a pure volume play, might see the most targets out of any receiver this weekend. So I'm all in on him in cash.
Absolutely, and also it's worth noting I'm reasonably sure that that Gresham was on the injury report as well. So I mean, not that he like factors in as super fantasy relevant, but that's still a few, if he's not able to go, that's still a few extra targets that have to go somewhere. And I don't think they're going to just be peppering JJ Nelson with targets. So he's definitely somebody to consider as well. And I'm fully like 1,000,000% with you on fading Mike Evans. I looked it up before. He's played a total of 3 games in his career against the Bears, and I think he's like only averaging 11 PPR points, like I think 5 or 6 points less than his career average outside of those games. So I'm fully with you. I think that's something that people will probably hear this week, but then they go, oh, well, yeah, Chicago's good against wide receiver ones, but it's Mike Evans, so it's fine. And I don't think it is fine. I think for $200, I'd much rather have Jordy and get a little exposure to that game. And then if not, I mean, I'm fine with anybody else in the range that you just mentioned as well. So I won't ramble on and repeat what you just said, but as we go down, Keenan Allen is like, he's my boy this week. It's going to be Allen and Montgomery. So if you pick up one of my head-to-heads this week, you know that those 2 guys are going to be in the lineup this week, like under all circumstances. What are your thoughts on Allen I might just play all the Chargers. I love Rivers. We like Gordon. I like Allen. Like, why not? Maybe I'll throw in Old Man Gates too and see what happens.
That's like a crazy man. Old Man Gates looks like he's about 75 right now.
Oh my God, he aged like a decade in the offseason. It's brutal.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, but love Keenan Allen. I mean, just target monster, even against a really stout pass defense in Denver. Still got double-digit targets, which is pretty insane. So yeah, love Keenan Allen this week. I think for that range, so from like 59 to 5,000, he's definitely my favorite receiver. Even though like Thielen's there, and guys like Chris Hogan are there also, I think he's my favorite receiver out of that range.
Yeah, I can get on board with that too. I think a lot of people are going to end up on Hogan trying to get a part of that game, and I don't know, man. I was very underwhelmed with his first game, so I'm curious to see if they try to get him more involved this week. I do think that that Landry could make an interesting play this week. As much as I'm not really super high on him, I think that the Chargers cornerbacks obviously are, I don't know, probably top 5 pairs of cornerbacks in the league. And if he's going to be working out of the slot and getting short targets, assuming Jay Cutler is smart enough to realize this, then I think that he could see a pretty decent floor given his price. Have you considered, or really just what are your thoughts in Miami in general between Landry and Parker?
Yeah, I mean, out of the 2, I'd probably take Landry. I know on Pro Football Focus's matchup chart, they do have Jason Verrett kind of locking down the Kenny Stills. I mean, he's quick enough to play the slot, so I don't know if he's going to stay directly outside and match up one-on-one. So I'm kind of apprehensive about the entire Miami offense in that game, outside of like playing a little bit of Jay Ajayi, just because they're still a run-first offense. They're not. I don't think they're going to get blown out to where they have to just completely abandon him. And those 2 corners they're so damn good, man. Like Casey Hayward and Verrett also, they're really really good players. They were kind of worn down by injury last year, but I would be really apprehensive about playing either one, Landry or Parker.
Yeah, Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, through the rest of that range, down to 5K, I'll probably take a couple shots at Macklin. I know, I mean, he wasn't terribly involved. I mean, he actually was kind of involved, but there wasn't a ton of volume because what Flacco throw like 17 times or something ridiculous, I think, last week.
Yeah, they're a really small amount. They ran like 45 times that game.
Yeah, so I mean, and obviously Macklin got free on a play and scored, but I mean, I think he could do some damage against Cleveland this week. And as you saw last week, it really only takes one play. So I think he's worth a look. I'm not trusting him in cash because I don't think the volume's there. But yeah, so sorry, I just got distracted by Deshaun Watson running in a touchdown.
There you go.
Damn, that was such bad defense too. Jesus. All right. Yeah. So, and then as we keep going, I really like Deshaun Jackson this week. We just talked about how well the Chicago defense plays against wide receiver ones, which just means, if Winston is going to be paying attention and he can find him on a play and get behind the defense, I think he's a reasonable play this week. It's also hysterical to me that Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, and Jamison Crowder were teammates last year, and they're all the same price this week. They're all right next to each other in my spreadsheet. So
that's like a nudge. That's like such a DraftKings nudge to say, "Hey, look what we did. We're being cute."
I also have them in season long on the same team in like 3 different places. So
why would you do that to yourself?
Oh, come on. We'll talk about that later.
Okay. I mean, they're 3 completely different players. We get that, but yeah, I mean that's just I feel like it's a headache, a huge headache week after week.
Oh yeah, well, of course, but luckily on DraftKings we're gonna win all the money with Jackson this week, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, I should be prepared for our GPP lineup to have Deshaun Jackson. And okay, I'll mentally prepare myself.
Yeah. All right. So as we keep going, what do we think about? I mean, I like both of the $4,100 receivers this week with Kupp and Davis. Are you leaning a particular way if you're going to play one of those guys?
Yeah, it's probably Kupp over Davis. Man, Jacksonville's defense scares me. Like they could end up being like a legitimately top 5 defense in the league. They have a superstar at every level of defense. But I mean, between both corners, defensive line, Calais Campbell just seems like a man possessed since he's there now. Their linebackers are really strong as well with Telvin Smith and a couple of other guys like that. So I think I'd be leaning towards Cooper Kupp. I know it's Jared Goff. I know it was probably an aberration last week against the Colts, but Kupp was involved, man. He was involved. He did catch the touchdown and also dropped another pass, but he seems like Goff's safety blanket, and if you're looking for volume, that'd be, I think, the way to go.
Yeah, I mean that works for me because I have him in Dynasty everywhere, so I'm perfectly fine with that. I agree too. I think that, I mean, obviously Davis had 10 targets last week, which was, if not the highest, one of the highest for wide receivers this past week. But I don't know if that happens every week. I mean, they were all of the pass catching options in Tennessee were either 8, 9, or 10 targets. So I don't think it's like a huge sort of like pat on the back for Davis to see that much volume. So I'm with you. I think Kupp is a solid play. Once we get past there, I mean, is there anybody that's jumping out to you here? I mean, it gets pretty gross pretty quick once you get below 4K, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's pretty ugly. The only thing I would say, if John Brown does not play on Sunday, J.J. Nelson could be interesting at 38. Marquise Lee at 38 could be, but I don't think he's going to get the volume that you would want for a play on DraftKings, especially. I mean, below that, man, it gets ugly real quick. Shot in the dark, potentially as a flex option, Ryan Grant from Washington. He's clearly the number 3 receiver there. Just Josh Doxson really can't get on the field yet. And in a game where, not a huge over-under 46, but not terrible either. Could see some play there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And really once you get past there, it's just, you're looking at just hot garbage. So
yeah,
I think we can safely move on to tight ends and not really worry about that we missed somebody.